Now you're very welcome along. It's the paper review. We're with you every Sunday. We're streaming right now on all our social channels. You'll be able to podcast in the usual places. We're joined in studio by Shane Keegan, former manager of Wexford Youths and Galway United, and writes a column in the Times Online every Thursday. And we have David Sneyd as well, whose work we'll be talking about today in the Mail on Sunday. Lads, you're both very welcome. Thanks a million for coming in.
Thank you.
So I'll give people the headlines first of all. Sunday Independence I have first, and it's all about Munster and the rugby. Munster stand tall, Carbery Stars on fine day for provinces is their lead story. Over here, as you would have seen yesterday, managers called the shots as GAA abandoned the hand pass rule. We're not going to see the 3 hand pass rule making its way into the league campaign starting very shortly. And then down the bottom, Lowry holds his nerve to grind out desert victory. A very, very happy, as you might imagine, Shane Lowry. Back page of the Sun then. Sarri in blasted flops. That was interesting yesterday. Mauricio Sarri saying he's finding it quite difficult to motivate his Chelsea players. Not a shocking thing really to hear about that dressing room over the years. And Wayne Rooney here, give Poch the United job. Rooney wants Pochettino to get the job as opposed to Solskjaer. Star Sport Sunday then, we'll fight to the end. Klopp, don't doubt us. I think increasingly people aren't. And then 270 grand a week. Chelsea splashed the cash to grab Gonzalo Higuain, who's going to be amongst the Premier League's top 5 earners when he signs for Chelsea this week. So 270 grand a week gets you Higuain these days. And then back page of the Sunday World, Pools fight Klopp. So again, this is Jurgen Klopp declaring Liverpool are ready to fight title rivals Manchester City right to the bitter end. Then we have Sunday Times, and it's Liverpool on your front page here. Bumpy ride is the big headline. Liverpool come from behind to win 4-3 in thriller against Palace. And again, that GAA hand pass story here. GAA scraps hand pass limit in rules overhaul. Then the Mirror, 7th Heaven, record breaker Ole on charge, but cop lead is crystal clear. Sums up the day yesterday. And then the Mail on Sunday finally. Great shot of Peter O'Mahony with his rib, no doubt, in all sorts of pain, tackling an Exeter player yesterday. And it's Reds on cloud 9, 3 Carbery kicks, enough to put Munster into quarterfinals. Munster 9, Exeter 7. Bottom here, Kevin Kilban. Mick should forget all about Declan Rice. He's shown us little respect, something I suspect if we don't get to today, we'll talk to Kevin about during the week, and a picture of Shane Lowry. So they are your front pages, lads. Now, as usual, the guests pick the stories and the papers, and I'm with 2 football men, so rugby has been shamelessly looked over in the main. But it's actually a great day to have you both in. There is a 3-page, I was going to say 2-page, but there's a 3-page spread, an interview with Paul Kimmage and future Republic of Ireland senior manager, currently under 21 manager, Stephen Kenny, which we'll get to. David, we should start with your piece, given that you're here.
No worries.
Let's massage that ego.
I just say though, I didn't pick. You were saying I didn't
David's
pick.
insisted that we start with his piece.
I was actually going to turn around on the way in. I was on the bus.
Look, we can't have David talking about his own piece, really, can we? So I'll jump in and save him.
What was
there,
your inspiration, David? Here it is.
I'll take you back.
I'll hold it up here so you can have a look. It is page 82 and 83 of the Mail on Sunday. And what you've done here is talk with 4 current Bohemians players who once were of the very famous St. Kevin's vintage, and talk to them about their experiences abroad in the UK trying to make it. And shock horror, the experiences weren't as glamorous as we all might think.
A big surprise, all right, isn't it? Look, I suppose it's an often told story of what happens over there. We're all kind of aware of the statistics. I think it used to be 3 in 100. I think that's decreased probably down to 2 or possibly 1 in 100 with the influx of foreigners even at academy level now. But it still makes for a great read, and I think the thing I like best about it is it's a new enough concept, bringing 4 lads together, which creates the fantastic environment where, how many questions do you ask, David? Maybe 2-3 questions.
I know, yeah.
You get a group of lads together, it doesn't take a whole lot.
I know. I was just looking for a handy week, to be honest. I was like, just do a bit of transcribing rather than actually...
it doesn't get a lot to get them talking, does it?
No, we're talking about Darragh Leahy, Luke Wade-Slater, Robbie McCourt and Danny Mandrew. My favourite bit is of the whole piece, like, it's really insightful, and you do get a good feel for some of the obstacles they face. Like at one point, Darragh Leahy says that he was basically told he wouldn't play in the first team because that would cost the club more money with payments to Malahide and Kevins. You just don't think you're going to face those obstacles when you go over as a green-eyed young player. And you think, well, I mean, I might not play for many reasons. That won't be one of them. So that was one of the things. But it's the dynamic which is good fun.
You've got Robbie McCourt. Similarly, when talking about reasons for not getting a chance, Robbie McCourt's problem is that Tony Poulos has taken over and will only play if you're plus 6 foot, apparently. And he didn't tick that box. So there's not a whole lot he can do to solve that either, isn't there?
Yeah. The dynamic, though, kicks out. The best part for me is they're talking about Christmas and flights home and how it's last minute, and someone saying that West Brom were the worst at giving you notice, and then you have to book the flights yourself and they're crazy expensive at the end. And one player is talking about, it's Leahy, I think, being on his own for Christmas 2 years in a row. Someone says, that's horrible. And Leahy says, yeah, I was sitting in a digs with another family, it just didn't feel right. And Wade Slater says that he was in a hotel and his mum came over. And then the best bit, in my opinion, of the whole piece is Danny Mandrew says, yeah, I missed New Year's 2 years in a row. And Robbie McCourt says, New Year's, will you relax? And Danny says, what? It's the best bit of the year. And you just, missing New Year's. Get over it.
They all literally broke their hearts laughing. And even I was looking at him thinking, what are you talking about?
No one cares about New Year's.
I know, yeah. That was funny.
Yeah, look, they all four fellas who, as you say, are all about to turn 21 this year. You get exactly the kind of conversation that you'd expect from four fellas that are about to turn 21 to a certain extent, leaving aside the insight that they can give. But yeah, it is. There is some really, really good insight to it. I mean, towards the very end, you get Robbie saying that the bit that kind of struck home with me is you think you will just come back home and play straight away, but it's not like that. And that is very, very much the problem. The fellas who are going to succeed when they have to come back here are the ones who can come into a setup. First of all, they've got to have the hunger to come back into a setup in the first place, and then can they actually get their head around the fact that, well, nobody in your dressing room really cares that you were in England 6 months ago. They really don't. You're not going to walk into the team just because you have whatever West Brom is the last team on your CV, and that's a serious shock. It's a serious shock to go from potentially thinking you weren't that far off the starting 11 at the likes of a Brighton or the likes of a West Brom in these boys' cases to you can't get in the matchday squad or you can't get in the starting 11 at a level that you thought was far beneath you, actually, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's tough. It certainly is.
If you're wanting the backstory, Leahy, a left back, signed for Coventry in 2015 and that ended by mutual consent in December 2017. McCourt is a centre-back midfielder. He went to West Brom, that ended in acrimony, it seems, and then Brighton attacker Mandrew and Wade Slater went to Stevenage in the fourth tier of English football in 2015. I think even he talks about just panic setting in and going to Stevenage with that instead of the prospect of going into the under-19s Irish League. Yeah,
it was an interesting one because he sort of, I can't remember if the line is in it, but he basically said he was actually bricking it about going into the next level of Irish football.
So to be honest, I was shitting it here just at the thought of going into the 19s League. A few of us went together. We thought, right, we'll all go over, we'll do well together. I don't want to stay in the League of Ireland. That
was his thinking. He felt as if, right, I'll get over to England and then things will just go from there, and everything's going to be it's going to be great for him. It was just in terms of with the lads. I did a piece before the FAI Cup final with Patrick McElhenney and Michael Duffy, and the two of them it was only a small part of it, but they were talking about their life going to trials and all the rest of it. And something just even then I was thinking, like, there's going to be a few lads here in the team, and even how it's worked out with the four of them being on the same Kevin's team, it just coming back. That was the reasoning behind doing the piece. And then, but just listening to their stories, like in little things, like even like with Robbie McCourt, who was basically being told for 6 months, we want you gone, like we don't want you here. We'll pay up a certain amount of money, but they weren't willing to give him what he was owed, so he stuck it out. His manager is saying hello to him every day, but his manager's the one who wants him out of the club, and he's dealing with all that. And
I had a couple of phone calls from his agent actually trying to see could they get him a loan move to get him out of there, because obviously his head wasn't in a good space. Now it didn't come to it. We didn't end up working together, but yeah, they were obviously trying to get him out of there. I'd say his head was in a really, really bad place, and you get that vibe from the article too. You know.
An interesting question for you then, Shane, is with these players coming back from 2, 3, 4 years in England, and clearly were very good players going over there to begin with. Do they come back fitter, stronger, with better technique than the batch who stay?
definitely not fit or stronger. We were chatting about that outside. Definitely not fit or stronger, which is remarkable for a multi-million-pound industry. How things are just left so loose and on the fly. You talk to, I don't know, maybe these four boys, but certainly in the cases of players that I've spoken to, the gym culture is a kind of, here's some exercises that we'd like you to do, and off you go and do it in your own time. Even the amount of collective strength and core strength and exercises that we're doing were little to none. Like a minor, an inter-county minor Gaelic football team would be doing far more strength and conditioning work than a Premier League academy team would be in that age group.
It's hard to fathom, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the first things you do. One of the first things you do when you get one of these fellas is you need to try and build them up a little bit. Definitely strength-wise, it's hard to understand how that can be the case.
Do we think there's maybe some logic over in the UK whereby, well, let's focus on the technique and that stuff will come later, or do you actually just think it's borderline negligent?
Yeah, it would certainly strike me as borderline negligent. So it would. I don't understand. I don't know what the justification is.
We're not giving it some logic, is what we're saying.
Makes no sense.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear the views of people in the system, although they probably just deny it. I don't know. They come in. I think everybody likes being on the grass. You know, they like looking after all that, and it's, do they really want to kind of be shoving these possibly already wealthy footballers into a gym when they don't really want to be in the gym? And I don't know, it really does, it amazes me, so it does. I was saying to David, I would have had first-hand experience of it with so I'd live right in the Laois-Kilkenny border, so we would have had Mikey Drennan down there, and Mikey got a move to Aston Villa when he was about 16, and now as it transpired over the last few years, Mike had quite a few problems going on. He stepped away from the game completely because of depression issues for a while, and is now back and is with St. Pat's this year, and fingers crossed will have a great season. But when he was over at Aston Villa, he really struggled with it, and because I'd had him for a few years and we were reasonably close, on two separate occasions Aston Villa actually paid for my flights and the whole lot to get me over there to kind of help him settle and try and get him to calm down. These were on occasions where essentially he had said, oh, here, I'm going home, kind of a thing. And you're doing everything you can, but it's amazing, Joe, like there's so little for them to do. There is so little for them to do. I remember throwing one suggestion out where we sat down and said, right, Mike, what do you like to do? If you're at home, what would you be doing? And one of the things he said was Mike was good at everything, and he was good at golf. And right, let's get you a golf membership, you know, and we suggested that to when we went back into the people, and oh no, that's far too much physical activity. He can't be playing golf in his free time, you know, so we had to knock that one on the head. And how do they fill their days?
He can sit in a golf cart. One of the players actually says, and I'm sorry if the four of them are listening, it's hard to keep up with all the names, but one of them did say that he thoroughly enjoyed the training, been out in the grass those 2-3 hours in the morning. The rest of it, frankly, was close to miserable.
After, when I went home, I was just thinking, I don't understand, why don't you not just have training with these lads in the afternoon?
Yeah, double sessions.
Like I know, not even double sessions, like I know obviously professional football life over there, you train in the morning and you're finished, but with these lads when you come over, give them the morning free, you can probably get into a lot less trouble at 10 o'clock in the morning than in the evening. So just have the sessions in the afternoon, do a bit of work, and like it's only something simple, but and then by the time they're finished, they could be wrecked tired in the evening after, and they might not want to go out, they might not want to do whatever. But it was one little small thing that came into my head. Why not just have an afternoon training session? As
someone who can sometimes battle to get up in the morning, my first thought then would be, well, they'll be up watching Netflix 2 or 3 every morning, and they'll be sleeping into midday. I mean, if you give people the opportunity to sleep in, it can happen very easily, and then you're not sleeping well at night. Maybe you're better off getting them out of bed. But I just can't believe they're not given more to do in the afternoon. So actually back to the question then initially. So physically, and it's quite remarkable, they're not coming back a step ahead of the pack who stay here. What about technically and in terms of how they understand tactics on the game?
Yeah, I would say that, you would say that technically they certainly are at least on a par, probably ahead, in that sense, so they are. And then it depends on what age they're coming back at and how long they've had over there as well. Trying to think of my own practical examples. Last year at Galway United, we would have had Ronan Murray. Now, Ronan's a different scenario because what's happened, Ronan's been there 10 years, like Ronan's 27, let's say. So he's been there 10 years and he played for Ipswich under Roy Keane, but he's slowly trickled down the divisions and he's ended up at a stage where he's playing at a level, you know, maybe going on trial with the conference sides and that kind of crack, and he's saying, no, do you know what, I have enough of it over here, I'm going to go back home. But again, you're interested to see, one, how is he going to acclimatise to it? But Joe, first training session, the players, the staff, everybody is going, you know, this fella is way ahead of anything that we've got, way ahead of anything that we've got. You could clearly see it in his case, but he's had 10 years. If we weren't seeing it with him with full-time training for 10 years, it'd be a problem, you know.
But technically, most of these lads would be better even before they've gone to England. That's the reason. That's the reason why they're gone to England, you know.
It's a skewed argument in that sense. They were very, very good to begin with, as we said.
It's just the attitude. It's just even with the attitudes. I made a point even just in it, like the 4 lads have come home, but they're actually sort of like the lucky ones in a sense, because there's so many who will come home and won't get picked up by clubs here and get that chance, and probably won't even want it. They'll just be totally sick of football. And like chatting to the lads, like some of them, like there was a little, you could tell that they were hurt by what's happened. There was a bit of bravado and a bit of slagging and all the rest of it. But like these are the lucky lads in the sense of that they've got another chance, that they can still play a bit of football, and also they have someone now like Keelan and Trevor Crowley who can actually get a hold of them and maybe give them that bit of motivation to kind of keep on going. Like,
it's a few, like they all seem to share regrets about the clubs they chose. You know, I regretted it definitely, says one player. I struggled badly. The club just wasn't right for me. Lovely place, but they don't actually give younger players opportunities. I could have gone to Southampton. They do give opportunities. I don't think I made a wrong decision. I just ... And Wade Slater says, you could have made a better one. Yeah, exactly. And that is the thing, you're making these huge decisions at 13, 14, 15. You don't really know the ins and outs of how a club works. I mean, like, if it was 300 a while back, Niall Quinn did make the point when he was talking a few weeks back that we are almost at a point now where the academies at Premier League level are so global and so thorough in terms of the talent they're bringing in, that it's pie in the sky stuff to even think about going over anymore. Like the model almost has changed, is where we are. I don't know what you'd say to a 15-year-old who's, you know, the best at St. Kevin's right now and he's got a Premier League club interested. It just feels like you almost need to say to the 15-year-old, you're not going to make it. Yeah. You need to almost come to terms with that now, so that when it happens at 18, 19, you just view this as your footballing education and you're mentally then prepared at 18, 19 to go.
I'd say it's so difficult because, and even tying it in with, say, the argument, and I'm just mentioning Declan Rice on this for a little bit, so who does he pick, Ireland or England? And for some reason they'll say, well, you'll get 100 caps for Ireland, you're not going to play for England. Like, that's probably the last thing, like, that should be like the last argument you're making to a player. Well, actually, you're not good enough to play for England, but you're good enough to play for Ireland. Like, that player will think, Rice will think, well, no, I actually am good enough. Like, all those fellas naturally will believe that they will make it. So
it's hard to get their head around.
Like, like it's very difficult. And it's even now with Gavin Bazunu, who's going to be going to Man City. Like, they're trying to now get him over early. Like, so it all being set up, he's going to stay with Rovers and do his leaving, and then he'll go over. But then literally, I think within a couple of months of him signing, they signed another keeper from America as well. And he's now probably thinking, Jesus, like, what do I do? But now they're still talking about him doing his leaving, but going over sooner. So goalposts move, and they all agree as well. It does come down to maybe the first team manager if you're going to get over there. But all these lads will believe, like any young player, like they're all going to believe in their ability.
The other thing in terms of the sales pitch that's been given to them when they go over there is, well, if it doesn't work out here, that you've got an awful long way to trickle back down, you know, and you've got that on your CV. You know, if I go to Brighton and it doesn't work out, well, I've got Brighton on my CV forever, and there's lots of levels below Brighton. If I don't go to Brighton and I sign for Bohemians 19s and it doesn't work out with Bohemians 19s, my next trickle down is the Leinster Senior League. You know, that's...
I suppose, do you know what is certainly of a bygone era is the notion that you would go over there and not be also basically in full-time education. I just can't believe you're allowed to take 14, 15-year-olds and not provide them with education. I think Man City will give you a private education now if you go over. Kev was saying that a few weeks back.
College, it's one of the best schools,
Shouldn't that be the norm, really? If you're taking a batch of 20 a year, that you actually educate them. They did think that you would just go over and then at 18, 19, turfed out, and you might have to get an apprenticeship or go back to school or just start from scratch. It's crazy.
Not to defend the multi-million pound industries and clubs that you have, but I suppose the only thing I'd say on that is there's two sides of the street there. Like if the player, an awful lot of time, unfortunately, some of our best footballers,
they're not great students to begin with.
Mightn't be great students, and they might have shown if you couldn't get them to really focus here where they were supposed to be doing it and where it was, you know, send it over there where they can go if they want or not go if they don't want.
That's a really fair point.
They're not going to embrace it.
Really fair point. You're defending the millionaires, but it is a fair point.
You have to want to. Like, those lads are going over to play football as well. Like, they're going over to make a career as footballers. So
geography book's been left in the bag at home.
Yeah.
What needs to be there, as you say, is right, I'm very good at football, but by the way, I've also been doing quite well in school. How are you going to tick that box for me when I get over there? There is no excuse under the sun for that not been provided.
Yeah. Page 82 and 83 there, the Mail on Sunday. If you're a Bohemians fan, you'll definitely want to check that out. Or if you're thinking of heading over, if you're a young talented player, it's well worth a read. So Stephen Kenny then, I haven't seen him do much since the announcement was made. He was on Marion Finucane, as comes up in his interview with Paul Kimmage. So it's not a 1 or 2 page spread, it's a 3-page spread with Stephen Kenny. How would you summarise the tone of this interaction?
So it sort of goes from judgmental to actually then going into a kind of a good conversation at the start, but it's just very interesting. Like,
bit of an arm wrestle.
Yeah, at the start. Well, let's be honest. Like, Paul Kimmage goes in 2-footed from the very start, like, and it's typical of how he'll go in, and it's good. Like, it sort of, I don't know if it sort of takes Stephen Kenny by surprise, but it's just like the first page of it is just sort of, not that you're wincing, but you're sort of reading. You get a sense of just how the conversation was going naturally, because obviously it's transcribed out, and you get the back and forth. It's just I think it's a great read for something like it really is. Yeah.
His point on that first page is almost about the Marion Finucane interview, and Paul had this sense that Stephen Kenny was very nervous. Yeah, that's kind of there. And he said, well, what's the root cause of that, or why is that? It was a car crash interview almost. Why were you feeling the pressure almost? And Stephen Kenny doesn't really have any great answer, or doesn't really want to engage too much in that whole area.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's a fascinating read. It's a bit of an awkward read at times, and you can almost feel uncomfortable reading it at sections, but I think it's all the better for that. I do think that Paul might have a slight misconception as to what sort of a person Stephen is. I mean, you see there at the end of Paul's introduction, he says that Kenny was an open goal, and that he will regale us with stories of playing with Roy Keane, regale us with stories of Ray Houghton and John Aldridge at Oxford. Stephen Kenny is not really somebody who regales people with stories, for starters. Right. And in terms of the uncomfortableness of the Marion Finucane interview, well, no, that's kind of how Stephen communicates. He seems to be quite comfortable with what others would regard as a kind of an awkward silence. He thinks before he talks. He doesn't just blab like I'm doing now, and he'll really, really think of every word, and that can make people feel uncomfortable. And I'll tell you, I read it, and then I had a bit of a drive up to here, so I threw back on the Marion Finucane interview as I was driving up, just to think, let me listen back to that in the way that Paul heard it. And absolutely, you can see why people go, that's quite an uncomfortable interview. It's not really. It's kind of how Stephen communicates. He's not probably the most, as I say, he's not blabby. He thinks about every word. Everything he says is kind of, very, very much thought through before it comes out of his mouth. And I don't think he would. I think I won't say his nose that would joint here, but like even Paul says himself, he looks at me quizzically. He's probably looking at you quizzically, Paul, because he didn't really feel there was all that wrong with that interview. I would think. Maybe I'm wrong.
It's the way, like, it's a great read. Genuinely is a great read. It's one of them where it's 3 pages, but you'll fly through it. Yeah. Like, it's not a kind of, you kind of go back to it, or you'll fly through it. And like, far be it from me to say, well, this is how he should have done it. But I do think if Paul was looking for Stephen to kind of be, say, regaling him and coming out with all these stories, if he had have actually started the interview, I think it's on the second page, where he goes, let's talk about the game. Like, not that you have to disarm him, but that's how, from dealing with him. If you get him talking about football, and then the other stuff comes out, rather than going in with that straight away, maybe I would have thought, that's just how I would have done it. But to be honest, at the same time, it's still a great read. Like, you're not going to. I don't think it's any worse for it. It's not. It's just you will literally fly through it, and there's so much stuff in it, and also a lot of quite a few bits that come out that no one would have been aware of on the League of Ireland, say, beat and stuff, which is the point of an interview. I think
it's very revealing. Like, the fact that it's on edge for so much of it. one, it makes it compelling, as you said, so it's a compelling read. And two, sometimes putting someone on edge means they reveal a whole lot more about themselves just by how they handle being under pressure. It's why in job interviews they put you properly on edge. It's not because they think you're bad. It's because they want to see how do you react to being under pressure here, and feeling like things aren't going your way. And so you do get that sense, like in some respects, like so the Saipan conversation. So I give that as an example. In some respects, it's very, it is at that arm wrestle, and you think, God, this is in places is awkward's not the right word, but you think Stephen Kenny's an unusual character.
Like he wouldn't have been asked for that before either.
Probably not.
You never probably would have been asked.
And yet at the end of it, you come away with, well, in fairness to him, okay, there was a certain awkwardness there, or a certain difficulty there in his personality, but he didn't bow down either. He didn't feel the pressure, well, I better give an answer to keep this person happy that he was interviewing me. I'm going to stick to my guns here, even though I can tell the interviewer's not happy. All of that stuff is going on through the piece. That reveals things about Kenny.
And what ends up happening then is it ends up being a brilliant piece, but being a brilliant piece, I think, in a very, very different way than Paul Kimmage had probably intended it to be.
As he says himself.
Well, the last line of his intro is,
that's right.
This was a surprise.
Yeah.
You know? So, for instance, to give you a sense of it, because we're probably not explaining it very well. So, like, he talks about Stephen Kenny's from Tala. He talked about the stigma of Tala in the 80s, actually. And, you know, an amazing story where Siobhan, his wife, went to Tala Community College, and he remembered back in the 80s, he says, I'm not being disrespectful. One of the girls got a job as an air hostess, and that was announced over the intercom as a big deal, you know, which an amazing kind of look back at a different time. So in the 80s, he had a trial for Oxford, big team at the time. Aldridge was there and Houghton was there. And I didn't realise, did everyone know that he played in the Fairview game, the Roy Keane Fairview game?
I personally didn't.
Right, it was amazing. Okay, so I had no idea. This is the famous game where Roy Keane, I think they lose 4-0 off memory. Keane is just a man possessed and pissed off and runs around the pitch, and he gets his move to Nottingham Forest on the back of it, So, you know, Kenny was playing in that game and talks about how, for me, he was the best player in our age group. That was my opinion. But did I think he'd be playing at Anfield 2 months later? No, I didn't see that happening. So that leads us into Saipan. Where did you stand in Saipan? He laughs. I don't know. Listen, ... You effing do know. Everyone has a view on Saipan. It is just...
You can actually imagine that.
That's great. That's brilliant. And I'm not fudging the question. You are fudging the question. I'm not. Life isn't black or white, and I don't see it as black or white the way you do. Paul Kimmage laughs. That's presumptuous of you. No, I don't know you, but just the way you've been talking, you draw very clear lines and stuff. Kimmage going to say, look, I've listened to everybody in Irish football has an opinion on Saipan. He finds it strange as well that Kenny reads about Jim Larkin but didn't read Roy Keane's book. And it goes on again. And Kenny says, look, in terms of Saipan, I don't know enough about it in terms of the intricacy of who said what, so I'm not going to side with one or the other. And I know you want me to, and that you think I'm fudging it, but unless you're part of the inner circle, you don't know. And Kimmage is like, well, you know, what do you mean you don't know what was happening? You know, where were you with all the papers? Every Tom, Dick, Harry was on the radio, giving an opinion. And Kenny says, yeah, I know there were versions, but... And Kimmage says, no, seriously, where were you in '02? Kenny says, I honestly don't know where I was. I'm giving you the impression now that I'm completely disorganised, aren't I? You are. In fact, I'm starting to worry that we've made a catastrophic mistake by appointing you as the next manager. It's unbelievable. You can't remember anything. You've no effing opinions on anything. Why would I want to play for you? In brackets, he looks at me, wounded. Kimmage, that was a joke, obviously. And Kenny says, it's wrong to say I haven't opinions and stuff. And on it, you know, so that is put it this way, you're not getting anything boring here. No. Like, that's edge of the seat stuff.
And I think what makes
that's it... throughout the piece as well, those sort of interactions are throughout it as well, which makes it...
And that explains my point about Kenny's not bowing down either and saying, okay, look, I'm with Roy or I'm with Mick or whatever. He's holding his ground and it's tetchy.
And it's almost... I think nearly what makes the piece almost is, as much as anything, is the clash between two different personality types. I mean, you've just quoted the line, like, you're fudging the question. I'm not. Life isn't black and white, and I don't see it as black and white the way you do. There's two very different people. Paul Kimmage is very black and white, very to the point, very abrupt. And
well, as he says in the piece, that's very presumptuous of you.
Well, well, that's the way, I suppose, that's the way he comes across. And that's why he's so brilliant.
Stephen Kenny showing a bit of teeth as well there.
Yeah.
Kind of dig back.
But as I say, I don't think he feels compelled to ever give people what they expect of him. He's he talks I think he talks on, I think it's possibly page 3, where he gets into, Paul takes him into
we'll get into that,
the Shamrocks, leaving Shamrock Rovers and that kind of thing. And it appears, speaking from somebody who would have in the last 6 months lost their job in a football sense, losing the Shamrock Rovers job, even more so possibly than losing the job in Scotland, seems to have been the making of him. He now more than ever has a sense of self, and that I am my own man. I'm maybe a little bit different in some respects to other people and what other people expect of me. But I am not going to be the person that people want me to be. I'm going to be Stephen Kenny, the person that I know I am, and I'm going to be really, really true to that. And that, you see, that to me is why he has flourished at Dundalk.
I think
that's such a true
can often
sense
happen with failure, doesn't it? It can often happen with failure where you're trying to appease different people and it doesn't work, and then you think, well, sod that. If I'm going to fail, I might as well do it my way.
That's the quote from him where he says, like, when I finished up at Rovers, I was at my lowest ebb, and then I realised I don't care what people think anymore. I know as much about this as anyone in the field. That probably sounds vain, but I decided whatever anyone thought in the future was irrelevant. So, as you're right, but losing the job at Rovers, again, as we're saying, like it's in the piece. It's not going to, we'll maybe spoil a section about a bereavement that was very close. And I won't say the exact nature of it because people would want to read it. And that had never come out before. And I can only imagine what that kind of period would have been like for him in his life, having lost a person close to him, and then having.
It was a close friend. People will wonder. They should still read the piece. It was a close friend, and it seemed to.
And we lost him. He lost his friend to suicide. So and then obviously losing the job, and then that obviously resolve obviously was kind of born maybe out of that. He would have had it before, obviously, but I'd say that was maybe reaffirming it for him, I'd say.
So I did wonder, and look, I don't know how well you know Stephen Shane, reasonably to a point.
Look, to a point, certainly not as well as anybody who's worked with him, but he's a fascination to me because, from my point of view, he didn't have a massive playing career. I wouldn't have had a playing career. So naturally, he's the kind of fella that in my shoes you would latch onto, and you'd be looking at every little different thing he does. I said in here in your own studio before as well that, if I already had a bit of an admiration for him, the fact that he would have given me a phone call within a few days of me losing my job at Galway and kind of talked me through the process. Well, not talked me through the process, but said, I understand where you are now, and here's how I felt when it happened to me. And you feel like every room you walk into, everybody's talking about you, and almost kind of said to me, not very many people care about the League of Ireland, Shane. You needn't worry. There's not that many people talking about you, kind of a thing. He was really, really good in that sense. And I say, again, in my shoes, you have to take great comfort from the fact that what seems to have made the man is losing his job.
I just asked that because I do wonder if he has his guard up here a touch. Now, I appreciate there are certain areas he may not want to delve too much into, so he talked to Marion Finucane about being adopted. Kimmage brings that up with him naturally here. And he's probing, he's pushing, and Kenny kind of says, look, I was adopted, it wasn't that big a deal. And he just talk about being curious eventually. But the guy who's very introspective and deeply thoughtful, and we see glimpses of that in his programme notes, that doesn't tie in for me with I was adopted, it wasn't a big deal. Or Kimmage, for instance, says, let's talk about the game. How important was football growing up in terms of your self-esteem? I don't know. I think I just loved it. Now, I promise you, if we said to Stephen Kenny, write programme notes on football and sport and self-esteem, we wouldn't get, I don't know, I think I just loved it. I just wonder, is he putting in the guard a little bit because he realises he is now segueing into a different position in Irish life, Irish sport, and I just wonder if he's been a little more guarded. Now, I don't have as much experience talking to him as you guys do, and maybe the previous 45 minutes or hour of the conversation means he's a little bit dodging and you know.
My main experience just of dealing with him is obviously in interviews and all the rest of it. Like I can't say I know him great personally. Like,
and interviews are a false environment.
He's glad to talk to it and all the rest of it. Like it's at the end of it where it is. It's like a 5-hour interview. And. Like, let's be honest, I know, but it's first of all a 5-hour interview, and obviously, my first thought when I saw it was 3 pages was I hope for the Sunday in those desk point of view that he could file this early. Because if he was filing this at 7 o'clock on a Friday, I'd feel bad for him. But I know what you mean. The question, he puts up a barrier, but that can be stuff. It's very difficult to get out with someone in an interview, regardless. 5 hours, that's totally deeply personal stuff, and he deals with it and the questions are asked and he goes through it and some of it, and I don't think he's fudging it. It's just, he genuinely might not have, it could be something that is compartmentalised and it's something that maybe he'll deal with further down the line. I don't know if it's a case of, I can't talk about it because I'm going to be the Ireland manager. I don't know if it would have been that.
I'm not clinging to that theory that strongly. I'm almost just raising it, and like the self-esteem question, I highlighted that because I thought more so. The adoption's tricky territory. He's not obligated to do anything here, and let me make that very clear. I don't feel in any way cheated by the answer.
I know.
But just on the self-esteem and sport one, I kind of just thought I feel like he does have thoughts on self-esteem and sport. I think he's seen it all around him his whole life. I think he's seen what it's done for young men across his life. So I just thought, why is he not elaborating on that? And that's reading too much into about 18 words in a 10,000 word piece.
Again, I think it's because I think with all these answers, like there's no answer where he goes into, there's no answer that's
detail,
exactly. And I think that there's two. I do think there's two reasons behind it. I think you've hit the nail on the head to a certain extent. It has to. How can it not affect what he can say, the role that he's now in? He has to be more conscious of what he's saying and who he's saying it to and how much of himself he can put out there. But I do also think that, he's a football manager. By and large, football managers like to be in control. In an interview with Paul Kimmage, you certainly don't feel you're the one in control.
No, I wouldn't think so.
You would imagine that you always feel that Paul is in control.
Yeah.
And therefore, you're definitely, you're hesitant. I think what you're saying is, because he thinks so much, I think he's far better writing his answers than speaking his answers. Because speaking just comes out. Writing, he can think about it and he can make sure it sounds like I want it to sound. It comes across like I want it to come across.
It is a good point, but then at the same time, he actually says in the piece at one point where I think he's been asked to do something for Old Bond Community College.
Right,
and then rather than actually writing it, he says, well, can you get someone to have an interview with me? And
I wouldn't know where to start.
So it's...
I don't get me wrong. On the whole, he's fantastic. In this, it's in a it's tens and it's brilliant.
As is Paul. Like Paul is equally.
It's good. So there's a point to finish then, and it's a quote from Off the Ball, November 21st. Kevin Kilban. If you're looking for an immediate response to a manager, this is when nobody had been appointed yet, by the way, and Mick and Stephen were being talked about as the two main contenders. If you're looking for an immediate response in the dressing room, Mick McCarthy would grab you more than Stephen Kenny. I'm telling you right now, that would be the case. It's me he's talking to in this radio chat. Did Brian Kerr suffer with that, I say? Kevin Kilban, yes he did, and it kills me to say that because I've so much respect for Brian and what he's brought to me, but there was an element of that around the dressing room. And I say, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that. I would think any Premier League or Championship player would be iffy about a League of Ireland manager. Kevin Kilban, Callum O'Dowda and Harry Arter and lads that have grown up in England will not know who Stephen Kenny is. I'm telling you that right now. So he asks him about that. He plays that to him, which is just like, I don't love the thought of that. But the thing is, I'm going to play this clip, and Kenny says, yeah, I'd heard that. So he was listening at the time. And were you hurt, says Kimmage. And Kenny says, no, because that's a weakness. You shouldn't be affected by criticism. And Kimmage says, well, we both don't believe that. And Kenny says, well, maybe when it's about your personal character, it's different. And I hope he understands that was not about his personal character. That was about this broader issue of a League of Ireland manager taking that job. That's why I asked about Brian Kerr. I asked about, in theory, a League of Ireland manager having to go into a dressing room with some Premier League players and increasingly Championship players and below. So at the time, that wasn't seen as a massive barrier to him getting the job, and the show has been nothing but impressed with the job that Stephen Kenny has done at Dundalk. It's been extraordinary. But it was a worthwhile talking point at the time. Elephant in the room kind of feels like
absolutely.
The phrase. If we don't talk about it honestly, then we're not doing our job. So I hope he understood that listening. I hope he's not feeling like we were knifing him in any way on the radio, because it wasn't that. But it's an interesting area. We've only had one other League of Ireland manager get the job, and you have a player in that dressing room saying there was an element, like being brave enough to say there was an element in the dressing room that weren't so sure about League of Ireland manager. Like, it's fantastic honesty for Kev to say that. He didn't have to. He could have sidestepped that very easily. So I hope Kenny isn't hurt, because it was anything but personal. It was about any League of Ireland manager. If Shane Keegan was being linked with the job, it would have been said about you. It wasn't identifying an issue in Stephen Kenny's personality or him personally and saying this won't go down well. It was general. So I hope he understands that.
It sort of ties in with what one of the lads, I think it was Luke, said in the piece that I did with the Bows lads, where they just wanted to go to England because that's to be seen as the success. Whereas if you stay here, then it's just that there is that respect issue. But
he did say to Ed Malone a few days later he finds the question insulting, so it probably does rankle with him.
I think about it like we said. Like,
then again, maybe
there's a lot of players. There's a lot of players in that dressing room who don't really have the right to be looking at.
Totally agree.
Like that, and
totally agree.
Stuff that he would have done with Dundalk in Europe and as a fella, but it's even like it's difficult. Like, you'll probably have a better appreciation of this about what it's like being a man. Well, you will have a much better appreciation. Sorry.
Are you sure about that statement, David?
Yeah. I'm only going off my football manager career here now. Sorry, Jesus. But like, yeah. So you will know what that's like in terms of having that sense of do the players actually respect you.
Yeah, well, look, you can decrease the level by about 100 when you're talking about. But I suppose in terms of like for like, me having no playing background and walking into the Wexford Youth's dressing room for the first time, absolutely, how could I for a minute not think that the players are looking going, here now, who's this, kind of a thing. And it then absolutely becomes about two things very, very quickly. It becomes about your work. How much can you impress them with your work? And that is in Stephen's control, and Stephen will feel 100% confident that he is going to essentially blow people's socks off with his work, and I think he'll be proven that will be the case. That will be the case. You talk to anybody, and there's no stone left unturned. The bit he can't control is the other thing is going to be the results, obviously. So if they go in and they win their first 3 games, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer go in, win the first 3 games, well then all of a sudden that question is almost immediately kind of removed. So it is. I will certainly take the chance to say my first game with Wexford was a South East derby against Waterford United, who had finished 3rd the previous year. We'd finished 2nd from bottom. We won the game 6-1. Okay, I could see in the players the next training session there was they were looking at me differently.
Okay,
they were looking at me differently. I would like to think they were impressed with the body of work leading into that game, and were starting to think, yeah, he kind of knows his stuff. But then the result, the result, you have how much control over the result. If Stephen gets 1 or 2 brilliant results, well then everything will go brilliantly. Obviously the question is, if he doesn't get 1 or 2 brilliant results in those first 1 or 2 games, are the players then going to go, yeah, his work in the training ground did look really good, but look, see how the game went.
He speaks to every player. It's just his man management as well. Like, he knows how players tick and how people tick. He just gets people as well, which is one thing you speak to anyone who's played for.
Absolutely.
They all know that. So it's one thing where obviously he's a coach and all the rest of it, and to be impressed with his body of work, he'll know what about players. Like, he'll be doing his homework and he'll know everything about them, what makes them tick and what they need, what drives them. And I think it goes down to the other point as well, where you could have someone with the best playing career in the world and they go onto a training pitch and they just don't have it, or they can't deal with people as well.
More often the case.
And that's it. So,
well, Kenny says there, without any doubt, I suspect as well, that he's going to go in there. He says it's going to be precise and it's going to be detailed. And look, I think we're all for that. And I think the reality is, and we talked to Kev about it actually, seeing as it's come up again today, but when he's in during the week, I think Kev, and probably did make the point that ultimately, if you're a massive name or if you're in football terms a nobody, I'm not saying Stephen Kenny is, by the way, but if you go in there and your training is good, players tend to judge you pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
2 or 3 sessions.
Absolutely.
And so, to be honest, I'm not that worried about it, but I do stand by the comments I made. I wouldn't be surprised to think that Premier League players or Championship players would be a bit sniffy about it. That's the attitude over there. Sorry, I mean, we can delude ourselves and tell ourselves the League of Ireland is fantastic, but the attitude over there is that it's not.
And in terms of your conversation on the radio, because I remember listening to the conversation on the radio that night, in terms of your conversation on the radio...
Disgraceful.
That was... When people are chatting about whether Stephen Kenny is the right or wrong appointment, in a pub, and I don't know if this is the media, this is what we should be judging everything about, but that is inevitably one of the things that 2 people chatting who have a reasonable understanding of football in a pub and are having a pint and are chatting about the appointment, they're going to ask that question. So,
well, certainly if one of them has 100 plus caps and played under a League of Ireland manager for Ireland,
now you ramp up
he's well
the value
placed
of that.
to give
There was a great moment that the Soccerers had with our kind of annual awards, and he was on stage and he sort of took the mic a little bit, and it was a great speech, and I thought what he was saying about he was pointing out the people who kind of were in the room and who had been involved with Ireland before, and all the people, and he was saying how he's representing them. He feels as if he is representing them, and without putting too much pressure on him for when he does get the job, there is going to be that sense that I'm just thinking about it now, like this could be a moment where if he comes in and takes it by storm and has Ireland playing how he had Dundalk playing, which in theory he should be able to do because there should be better players in that squad, lads who are international footballers. He, like, if that happens, you would have to be just deluded and an ignorant gobshy not to then think that there's something in this League of Ireland. If people still don't see that, well then there's no hope, and that's why there will be so much goodwill from the League of Ireland circles, and there will be players in that dressing room who maybe will be iffy about it, but then you'll probably find that those players maybe won't be around for too much longer if they're not of the calibre that he wants as well, you know. And
deservedly so, you know, if that is their attitude. But I really don't think it'd be the predominant one. He's been in the Europa League. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of all he has to say to them. Like,
it's not the barometer to go off, but I remember, like, man, lucky enough to cover all those games in the Europa League, and literally every press conference was from the opposition manager, this is not a typical Irish British team. And that's not the barometer to go off judging what other people think of you. Like, as he says himself, he knows what he wants from his players, how he wants to play, and he's going to go in with that mentality, and it will be his way. Like, there might not be the biggest names, he might not end up playing. Right. He'll get lads who want to play how he wants to play. He says it himself, maybe results aren't the most important. He'll soon find they will be. And he knows that, obviously, but it's just, I think it could be a big thing as well, as I said, for the league.
Huge. And to be honest, no better person to go and represent the league.
That's for sure. If we're, by the way, if we're hoping that he's going to have luck on his side, David will tell you, about 10 minutes after he got presented with the Sports Personality of the Year at the Soccer Awards, he then won the raffle. He won the raffle for the night stay. Yeah. Last question before you move on, and here's just from me asking you, because you'd have a better. Why did he agree to do this?
The interview.
Like, he seems to spend a lot of the interview trying, as you say, not to give away a massive amount. He's sitting down to do an interview with Paul Kimmage
for 5 hours.
He knows what he's going to get. I was just trying to think, you know.
I think this is something I think, like, that Paul was chasing even before he was the Ireland manager. So there could be that element as well where he knows, well, he's not just asking me because I've got this gig. Like, I think he did want to speak to him even before that. So he could have just had a spare 5 hours. But
I'm delighted he did, but I'm just wondering from, you know, from...
Well, you know him, you ask him.
That can be the first question from his next interview with
him. Look, it's obviously well worth a read. We've spent loads of time on it there. It's in the Sunday Independent. I mean, it's pretty cool to have the next Irish manager in that kind of environment and doing that kind of interview. So it's well worth a read. If we very quickly zip through the final football stories with our two football men, then Eamon Sweeney's talking about Neil Warnock and Brexit, and is not terribly shocked that there is this leave attitude within football, and it's Johnny Foreigner who dives. Tommy Conlon touches on it too as well, the outrage that the penalty shootout in the FA Cup at the weekend trumped Theresa May's speech where, you know, she could have resigned potentially. So there's a bit of Brexit talk in the football pages as well.
I'll openly admit now my understanding of Brexit is about as low as any man's. Could certainly be.
Most of the lads over in the UK as well.
Fit right in at Westminster, I think, to be honest.
But I thought Eamon's piece was really, really good for two reasons. It's his usual entertaining stuff. You know, it's very, very funny in pieces. But then when he actually goes into what it could potentially mean, I certainly didn't have a full understanding of just how big a part how much it could change football over there. But just on the interesting part, you've mentioned it. I thought this was very good. Where are we? Here we are. It's a different case altogether when Johnny Foreigner hits the deck. So this, as you say, is talking about the diving issue. Cue the clucking, the fit of vapours, the exclamation of "Get up!" An exasperated voice of a man dealing with a waiter who doesn't speak English in a kitchen that doesn't serve chips. If ever there's a way of words, he certainly hasn't there. But yeah, Joe, I mean, he goes into the actual percentages of players. Here we are. Players from a nation in the world's top 10 have to have played 30% of their country's international games the previous 2 years, a figure rising to 45% for rankings between 11 and 20, and 60% for rankings between 21 and 30. So these are the rules that are currently in place for players that clubs are trying to bring in from outside the EU, which now effectively obviously would become pretty much everybody if they weren't in the EU. So, I mean, he lists off, that would mean that N'Golo Kante wouldn't have ticked that box when he arrived in the Premier League. Cristiano Ronaldo wouldn't have ticked that box. Thierry Henry wouldn't have ticked that box.
Extraordinary, yeah.
You know, that's amazing.
A BBC survey showed that currently 332 players from the EU currently playing in Britain would be excluded under those criteria. This is in the event of a no-deal Brexit, as I understand it. But, who knows what kind of Brexit we're going to get. But I hadn't fully realised it was that serious either.
Me either. It certainly could massively change the landscape, really, you know.
You know, he references the horse racing industry too. And Dennis Walsh in the Sunday Times has a brilliantly it's not simple, it's very, very complicated, but he makes it relatively simple to understand about what it might mean for horse racing. And the racing industry has come out in the last week really to just flag how serious this could be if it's a no-deal Brexit. So the big issue, the dominant concern, he says, is the movement of horses. So in 2017, for instance, 26,000 horses moved between Britain, Ireland and France in just 1 year, and a lot of it for sales. And so he says there's a tripartite agreement at the moment that will fall. In an orderly Brexit, it'll continue to function during transition, but if there's a no-deal Brexit, then it could be an absolute mess. So he says here that in practical terms, horses leaving or entering the EU are subject to veterinary checks at points of entry. And in Ireland, there are only 2 border inspection posts at Dublin and Shannon airports, because essentially they hadn't been needed, he says. So he says Brian Cavanagh, Chief Executive of HRI, the Horse Racing Ireland, said this week that work had started on making a border inspection post ready to go at Dublin Port. But, you know, he said the thoughts of these kinds of checks and restrictions, horses standing around ports for hours, fills everyone in the industry with absolute dread. In total as well.
Would it be like a common travel area for horses then?
I mean, they're going to have to sort something out. And the concern, and he rightly makes the point that trying to get this sorted out, can you imagine where this is on the agenda in Westminster? How small a cog in the wheel it is, horses.
I reckon if some of those people in Westminster who would probably love their horses, if they realise what was actually ahead of them with that.
That's true, yeah.
They'd be like, oh no.
He said 52% of the current stock of National Hunt horses in Britain originated in Ireland. In a no-deal scenario, World Trade Organization rules would come into play, which would mean an 11.5% tariff on geldings. So that terrifies anyone selling horses to the UK.
But isn't it amazing, Joe, like if you think, as I say, with very, very poor understanding of the whole thing, if you talk about the amount of people involved in the horse racing industry who, you know, have a fondness for whose livelihoods are involved in it, you think of the hundreds of thousand people who are avid soccer fans over there. It's almost like this is kind of the stuff the Remain people should have been putting out there, to try and win the thing the first time round, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a fair point, certainly on the racing. So that's there's a Brexit flavour starting to eke its way into the papers. This is the first time I've seen it this widespread, actually, in the papers.
And just with Tommy Conlon in the sin, though, you go through it and you just laugh constantly. It's just, it is very good, because he's tying it in with when Theresa May was making her speech, which was only 2.5 minutes, but was still quick enough for her to lose 500,000 viewers.
That's amazing.
Something like that. Which that's fair play to her. That's actually really impressive. But like, he's talking about obviously the Derby County Southampton match that went to extra time and then penalties. So it's on BBC One, and then he says they had a decision to make: shunt the football over to BBC Two or the Prime Minister. At full time, Gary Lineker, presenting from the studio in St Mary's Stadium, gave us his verdict. We'll have to overrun, he revealed. There will be a news bulletin on BBC Two at 10 o'clock that you should know about, because obviously there's a bit of news going on today. But we're sticking with the football until the end. And then Tommy writes, and with those fateful words, Lord Reith sat bolt upright in his grave, the founding father of the BBC.
Yeah, it does make the point. If she had resigned, and I'm sure they had checked with the communication staff, there's not going to be anything like that, is there, in advance? So they would have known. But
true.
It would. He says it would have been a big misjudgment. But to lose that many viewers in
something like that, maybe
2 minutes is pretty impressive.
So hold on, wait a minute. I'm just trying to go back here. So some 600,000 switched over to BBC Two to watch her, giving her a total audience of 2.5 million. She spoke for 2.5 minutes. of 2.5 minutes, which might seem like a trifling period of time, but was in fact long enough for her to lose more than 1 million viewers before she finished.
I know it's low down on her priority list, but I wonder if she, how did the speech go? Well, you lost 1 million people in 2.5 minutes.
I also like the fact that Hugh Edwards, one of the BBC's anchormen, liked the tweet criticising the fact that...
I'd say he did.
Yeah,
miserable outside Westminster having to wait for it all.
It's just funny. For anyone who hasn't got a clue about Brexit, it's actually something that you can read about Brexit that's actually funny.
Yeah, which is saying something. Shane Lowry's on all the front pages. There's some great pictures. There's a picture here, I'll hold it up for you so you can have a look. And this is on page 12 of the Sunday Times. Lowry holds his nerve and he's lifting up his young daughter, and that looks very much like his wife's, the back of her head, looking at the pair of them. And David Sneyd came in here today and said, this did it for me. Yeah. This, maybe it's because you're a father now.
Spot the new father. The new father.
This one just had you a bit rattled.
I did, yeah. Well, I also because it was like this morning.
It's a safe place. There's no toxic masculinity here.
I know.
Be comfortable with your tears.
Yeah, no, because I was actually, on hand on heart, I was actually feeding my own son this morning while I was looking at it.
How old's your son?
He's 5 months old.
Okay, for your first?
Yeah, my first, yeah, that I know of. And it's just a great photo. I was even looking at it thinking, that's the photo we'll have at home.
Yeah.
It's not going to be him with a trophy. Like it's just a fantastic photo of a fantastic fella. It's a shame maybe that you can't see his wife properly in it as well, because even his daughter you can't really see properly. But it's just great. It's just, even look at his face. Like look at him. It's just pure happiness.
Yeah.
Pure
I think
happiness.
everybody still remembers Porrick Harrington's little fella running out that time when he won it as well. You know, it's the kind of memory that sticks with you, all right, isn't it?
I think I saw as well yesterday online. I think it was Ryan Bailey from the
42. Yeah, it was.
He said that he actually mentioned that he'd love to win something so he could share it with his family, and it's just glorious.
You retired to the next room this morning and just had a few moments.
I was on the 39A into town today, just bawling my eyes at the back of the bus.
There's nothing wrong with being in touch with your emotions.
I know. It's just great, and well, obviously then when I go reading about it, as I was saying to you earlier, like just reading Roy Curtis in the Sunday World, because just obviously
who you said you've been reading for a long time.
Yeah, because most people would have been he's been kind of a staple, and he's just. I love reading him because he's just got such a way with words. I think he's very, very, very good writer. Like he just brings something different, and he's just got a bit of a warmth and a bit of a, I don't know, he's just got a flow. But it's just the intro where he's talking about, with Street Fighter grit, a short game is cultivated as a Van Gogh brushstroke and a sun-bursting smile. Shane Lowry transformed the Arabian desert into a palace of atonement. So you're not going to get that all the time. I'd say up there with my colleague Philip Quinn, similar way with words, and it's just great intro for the piece, and sums it up, and it's just.
Philip Quinn's writing about Shane Lowry today. Everyone is really. Lowry admitted he'd slept, although he had slept reasonably well, he had twice woken up during the night and had some bad thoughts going through his head. That's Derek Clemens in the Sunday Times report. He said that to various people, and he was imagining his daughter caddying for him at the par 3 at Augusta, because he gets back into the top 50 in the world now, so it's a good shot of getting back to Augusta. So
that's actually a good point, but on a serious level about it, in terms of in the piece about the night before, he woke up and he had a couple of bad thoughts. You can only imagine what was going through his head, and in terms of after what had happened before for him in terms in 2016, but. Just, we were saying, he just probably is one of the most likeable.
Yeah, there's not a bad bone there, down to earth.
Yeah.
Right, let's rip through some stuff, because there's actually some very good stuff. A chance meeting between Liam Hayes and David Walsh. Cian Healy's done some interesting pieces with various people. There's Roy Sheehan, the boxer. There's Niamh Rockett, the Waterford hurler, she's doing interviews across the week, but really, really good ones. And Marie Crowe talking to Carl Lacey as well. We've struggled to hit everything, so let's rip through some stuff very quickly. In terms of GAA, Mick Foley on page 11 of the Sunday Times, you thought was a nice different kind of piece. Obviously there's lots on the hand passing rule and stuff, but you liked Mick Foley looking at two of the lesser lights in hurling.
Yeah, very, very much the lesser lights when you're talking about an All-Ireland club junior hurling semi-final, and even more so when you're talking about Leitrim against Monaghan. But it's really, really good. It's a very, very good angle that he's managed to come from on it.
Carrick Shannon against Castleblaney.
Yeah, I'm desperately trying to look at Twitter here, because that game is on at the moment, so we might get an update on how that one's going. That was thrown in at 2 o'clock, so they're well into it at this stage. But he manages to paint a really good picture, I think, David, of both areas, some of the diehards that are involved. He's talking about the Carrick side first, when he says that obviously it's such a tremendous achievement for them. 10 Leitrim teams had made a Connacht final previously. All of them had been beaten, and he's talking about, you know, people who've moved away, as tends to happen in places like this. You know, a lot of the people are moving away. He got a phone call from Australia from somebody who wanted to congratulate him and say this is wonderful. Want to know, was there anything that he could do from Australia to say well done, and he managed to wrangle 40 kit bags for the lads out of him, which was a great move out of it, so it was. But yeah, really, really good, as you say, very, very much unheralded. In the case of Castleblaney, it took the arrival of a Kilkenny man, a Ballyraggett man down there, which is, as you can imagine, a Kilkenny man arriving into an area like that would be treated much the same as a Monaghan man arriving into the Gaelic football parts of Kilkenny would be, and he seems to have done a really, really good job in the area. Yeah,
no, there's a great line there where kind of he says the hurling people in the town found him, the Kilkenny man. So you just have like visions of like, yeah, like
you must know about hurling.
Yeah. So it was just something. Yeah, kind of. It's a nice piece by Michael, and it's on page 11 in the Sunday Times. I suppose by the time maybe people might get around to reading it now, if they haven't already, the pretty much might be over. And
still worth a look though.
It's still worth a look, just because like it's a preview of a match, but it's also kind of the story of two different kind of various towns. There's stories of grief and a bit of tragedy, and yeah, it's just different, and it's well worth a read. Even if you haven't got a bit of a graph for GAA, it's you'll fly through it, and you'll want to know who's won the match by the end of it.
Okay, good. Yeah. Seeing as we're talking about hurling, Shane, I've heard a few people mention that Derek McGrath's lecture, I suppose is what it was, or presentation at the GAA coaching conference was exceptionally good, and you happened to be there. I guess you're an interested coach, and you were saying McGrath was every bit as good as people might suspect. Can you give us like the spark notes here?
Well, firstly, I'd say he would certainly disagree with the word lecture. We'd definitely steer away from lecture, because the last thing he was possibly attempting to do was to lecture anybody, which is part of the whole thing with him, really, is that he's as far from lecturing you as you could possibly get.
Good point,
look, he was fantastic. How
long did he speak for?
He spoke for 45 minutes, and I go to a lot of this stuff, whether rightly or wrongly. I go to an awful lot of these conferences, an awful lot of these speakers, and I often talk about, you know, how many nuggets can you get out of somebody. His ability to drop that many nuggets in 45 minutes was absolutely amazing. We were coming away after it at the end. I'll go into a couple of the things he said now, but we were coming away at the end. We were just passing comment, as you do with these things, that it happened to be on the same weekend as the Pendulum Summit. And I challenge anybody at the Pendulum Summit to claim that they got as many nuggets in 45 minutes out of anybody who presented there as we got out of Derek McGrath. There was such an openness about him, an openness, and because actually he had showed a video of Park Matney at the time he'd got injured that he'd made for the team to be shown on the way to the Munster semi-final, I think it was, and like he sat down in front of a camera. It probably took him the best part of 2 minutes before he could get a word out. Every time he tried to speak, his emotions got the better of him, and he got up and he went away and he came back, and we're watching all of this, and I'm thinking to myself, is he okay with this? He also showed us a letter.
So this is in the video he recorded, he couldn't get the words out?
That's it, That's it. Definitely a good 2 minutes before he managed to speak his first word. Right. The interesting thing about it as well was, again, I'm trying to put myself in Derek's shoes here. I was thinking, I have no affinity to these boys at all, and I'm nearly getting welled up watching this. And it kind of dawned on me at that stage to go, right, I'm going to stop looking at the screen, I'm going to look and see where is Derek. And you look over and you can see Derek has lowered his microphone so that his breathing can't be heard, and is looking away in a different direction. So I'd say even he felt right, I can show everybody else this, but I'm not watching this again. This is a little bit too much for me. Right. He showed us a letter that he got from one of the players after he stepped away, thanking him for not transforming his hurling, transforming his life. He showed us the text that he sent into the WhatsApp group when he was exiting it. Right. After Fanning got the job, he says, lads, now's the time for me to step away. You've got a new guy, and gave us the full text. Within that text, he talked about his love for the players, and then spoke about how he's not going to make any apologies for anybody in this manly world of hurling for using the word love. He said it was a genuine love, is exactly what he had for them. He showed us the notes from a game plan heading into one of the games, which we all got a bit of a kick out, because I think point 9 on the game plan was how they were to go about tactical fouling. So we certainly
Hilarious.
got it. Yes, he had to own up to that
Okay.
one. So he did. But the openness of the whole thing
That sounds great, yeah.
was absolutely fantastic. And I suppose the way I kind of put it is, I've been to a lot of these things where you come away and you want to be a better coach. You come away from Derek McGrath and you want to be a better person. You know, never mind being a better coach. And they're very, very lucky there's no transfer system in the GA, because I'd say every hurler in the county would want to be playing under him based on how we spoke last week, you know.
God, if that's available on YouTube or anywhere, it'd be great.
Will be, yeah. I've gone to it every year for the last 3 or 4 years. They're usually up on the GA's YouTube channel about a month after it.
Okay.
So I'd say keep an eye on that in the next couple of weeks. Keep an eye on my Twitter. I'll fire out a link to it as soon as it's up, because it is anybody with any interest in management or people, to be honest with you, Joe, needs to see it, you know.
He's a great fella. I mean, I think that's evident just from his general demeanour. I'm not surprised to hear it was so good. So away from GA then, a few quick pieces. Liam Hayes, Dave Walsh, like I started this piece and thought, well, I probably won't finish this, and then you just go right to the end. It's a chance meeting between Hayes and David Walsh, it seems, on the Shelburne Road in the last week or so, and it turns out, I mean, they knew each other, and he interviewed him, Dave Walsh interviewed him before the 87 All-Ireland final, and then there was a falling out. They basically hadn't spoken in 25 plus years when they bumped into each other this week. That's how this thing kicks off. Also, by the way, he kicks off, the first line is, the hero of this story is a woman. We'll get to that later. And he does. Liam Hayes, 57 now. We were good friends 30 years ago, he says. We both wrote about sport for a living. He was also one of the country's best Gaelic footballers. And he remembers the interview on the eve of the 87 All-Ireland final, where they're chatting away and Hayes is a very good interviewee, and the tape recorder was switched off, and Hayes said to him, "You haven't asked me about Gerard." Gerard being Hayes' older brother, who 4 years previously, 1983, at the age of 24, had ended his life on the pitch at the local club, says David Walsh. And he said the tragedy was one that people had no wish to speak about. And Hayes said to him in that interview, "I've never spoken about Gerard, but I'd like to now." And he did. And Walsh talked about fearing for Hayes, you know, that this was going to be published on the morning of the All-Ireland final. Meath won by 6 points. Hayes was man of the match. And he got a letter from Hayes' mother, Margaret, who explained that Liam had never spoken about his brother before, and that she had driven in on the Saturday night, knowing Liam had told her he had spoken to Walsh about his brother, driven in on the Saturday night to get an early edition of the paper, and she read it under the street lights close to the GPO on O'Connell Street, read what Liam said. Tears flowed, she said. Suddenly the All-Ireland final, not very important. Like an extraordinary picture to even think about that. And then he goes on to talk about how he and Hayes fell out initially over an insult he says was gratuitous that he wrote about Liam's book, even though the overall review of the book was complimentary, the Out of Our Skins book. And then that coolness became Arctic over Michelle Smith. And then lo and behold, 26 years later, they see each other in the street, and Hayes says, "How are you keeping?"
Yeah, no, it's good, yeah. Like Liam's my boss, and I actually bumped into the two of them as they were going for their walk.
Did you understand the context?
This is it. I was looking at it thinking, what's going on here now? Who was out of a job? And what you call it? And it was literally because he said to me, he was like, "Oh, I'll be up in a little bit," and he rocked in a couple of hours later. Like,
he said they went to Starbucks for 2 hours.
Yeah, and yeah, it was. And I was curious. I didn't know there was going to be, say, this interview. And it is purely by chance. It literally is. It's two old mates who've fallen out, realised after 20 odd years, like, why did we fall out? It was not ready for that. And then have a great chat. And as you say, you start it, and before you realise it, you finished it, because it's very good. Like.
In terms of the catch-up chat, Walsh says, matter-of-factly, Hayes says his body can take no more chemo or radiation. Even the immune system of Meath football giant can endure only so much. Stem cell treatment is the next stage. Hayes talks about, he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2010. Talks about how wonderful it is in the unit in St James's. He says, what strikes you about cancer units is how chilled and polite and caring and friendly and human everybody is. Then you come out and re-enter the real world. Out here is not quite so impressive, he says, one of the standout quotes.
It's I think a great line there as well. If you look in the midst of our conversation, I realised that 25 years of separateness is vanished in 25 minutes. You know, it's fantastic. He then finishes off by getting around to asking the question, and this is the one that kind of struck a chord with me. He finally got, and I'm sure this question has probably been with him a long time. Why did you choose on All-Ireland final day to speak about your brother? And he basically says that he did it for his mum. And I suppose Irish men as we are, we find it hard maybe to talk about our mums and our dads about stuff, and sometimes it's easier to talk to them via another medium, and that's clearly what he's done here, you know.
Yeah, and the reason she's the hero of the piece is she's always spoken about him publicly, and he says, when I visit home now, I'm going to see the black notebooks, the one she calls her sad book. It has the names and contact details of all the people she's helped cope with the trauma that comes after losing loved ones through suicide. She's 86 now and still at it.
Man,
What a woman.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Isn't it?
A woman.
I can probably imagine there's more than one black book as well, which is even worse, you know. But
it's a hell of an encounter, isn't it?
yeah, it really is. It's just something totally different. You don't expect it, and it's just very poignant, as you say. It's not an interview. It's like there's actually very few quotes in the piece. It's just kind of talking through the whole situation and kind of their relationship, and then obviously at the end and about Liam's mum, and yeah, it's just it is very nice. Yeah.
To begin to finish up, because we're well over an hour here. Actually, we've been in here all day at this stage trying to cover everything. Cian Healy, he's across various pages talking about. We might finish him in just a moment. There's Roy Sheehan, the boxer, and there's Niamh Rockett on the same page in the Mail on Sunday. I think they're both really good. I guess very different pieces, obviously, but a similar theme of trying to fight a little bit against the odds. Niamh Rockett, you'll have seen across the week. I think her quotes have been everywhere, really. And I don't know, did she do extra with the Sundays, or maybe I just didn't see the full extent of them. So she, you know, she plays hurling or camogie for Waterford. The Little Woods Island Camogie League's starting up again, and you know, she was told in her teenage years she had a chronic knee problem, that she was going to be in a wheelchair once she hit 30, which is kind of amongst the worst kind of news you can get at that age. Her dad, being stubborn, she said, well, we'll wait until you're 18, because they wanted to break her knees and realign them. And then she's just kept on playing, amazingly. And she has arthritis. You have the knees of a 60-year-old. A doctor has told her recently that's how bad your left knee is. She won an intermediate All-Ireland in 2015, and now she's on supplements, painkillers, permanently. She says, I could be up all night, not able to sleep. There's no massaging it, no rubbing it, nothing you can do, just this constant ache. You can't ice it or get the swelling down. Really extraordinary.
I don't know how you live with that.
I don't know. She was on Off the Ball AM as well during the week doing an interview. I thought the piece, I had seen that during the week. The piece opens with the facilities for the Waterford team now, and how in the not so distant past, when she was playing camogie for a county, they had to give €2 or €3 to pay for the lights, all of them. And going to a championship match, they were told, you can either have the bus or you can have the meal. You can't have both. And then they broke through with a junior title in 2011, and now it looks to be a really great state of affairs in Waterford. So Tuesday nights they train on the WIT sports campus along with the senior hurlers. So afterwards they'll have a meal alongside Austin Gleeson and Jamie Barron. And so she talks about, you know, it's fantastic. And her father played for Waterford as well. And she's talking about the younger players coming through, where you're sitting next to Austin Gleeson and you're getting to know them and you're friends with them. Just this sense that you're a part of it now. You're not the second-class citizens you most definitely were.
I'd wonder, in terms of what she's gone through in her kind of life, to still be playing, like how much pressure does that put on you?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel, I have to succeed, I have to achieve because I'm putting my body through so much?
Can't really bow out in the first round.
That's what I mean. Like what happens? Like, and it's just, like, she's not sleeping at night and all the rest of it, and I don't want to be adding to her anguish here, but like there must be an enormous amount of pressure that she must put on herself just to feel as if to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, obviously she's getting loads out of it. She does make an interesting point, by the way, about the game. The rules need to change. So she said the last year's final wasn't good. It was very stop-start. If you didn't see last year's final, loads of frees blown up, because she says we're all doing these gym programs, but you can't shoulder in camogie. Ref only was doing its job, and also we have to wear the skirts. We tried to vote out the skirts to go for shorts, but it didn't get through Congress.
What?
That's
the camogie situation. The camogie Congress might need to re-examine that. She says camogie needs to come under the same bracket as hurling. So they wanted to get skirts out, and it didn't pass through Congress, which is just
typical, all right.
beyond laughable. That's a good piece on page 71.
Yeah, there's another piece just on sticking with the camogie for a minute. Just when you talk about they certainly felt like second class citizens, and hopefully that's changing to a certain extent. Cliona Foley has a good piece on page 14 with Katie Power of Kilkenny as well, because you've got the camogie league is starting this weekend, and that's, I suppose, why we've got a couple of pieces. But again, on the topic of being somewhat second class citizens, Power's club Piltown had got to the camogie final when they narrowly lost their first senior final to Thomastown. It actually took place at 11 in the morning, with Piltown's hurlers, including her brother, also in the county final the same day. They requested an early throw-in in their opposition, and the local camogie board facilitated it. So again, 11 o'clock in the morning for a county final, because obviously the lads, it seemed, had to take preference, isn't ideal,
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a good piece, that one with Katie Power as well. Again, another good camogie piece heading into the kick-off of the league this weekend.
You liked Roy Sheehan?
Yeah, Mark Gallagher in the Mail on Sunday. Obviously, you have it there in front of you. It's just a mad story. Like, the headline is the reality bites for Cinderella Man, and it's just well worth the read. Again, it's just typical of Mark Gallagher. He finds these pieces, and he's got a great kind of vast of knowledge of different sports.
Yeah, he's teasing through. So Sheehan won the last man standing. TG Carr kind of
he got him off a building site.
Cinderella Man type competition where they wanted to give someone the chance to turn pro. And he hadn't fought for a few years at that stage. He was working away. He had been with the high performance unit with Gary Keegan for a time, but the prize was 25 grand and the promise of an Irish middleweight title shot if you win.
Which he hasn't got.
No.
And
so
even the money, it took him a while to get the money, and you go through it, and I think he's 33, 34 now.
Yeah.
And he's back on the building sites, and he's still out this fight, and
shot, yeah.
It's
he says,
it's just going to be, I don't know what's going to happen with it, but it's just well worth it.
It's a great find, yeah. Reality Bites is definitely a good headline. He says, I'm caught in a loop now. I had to take 5 weeks off work before winning the last man standing competition to get myself ready for it, but it all costs money. And he says, if you want to stay in the game, it takes money. His professional licence is now up for renewal, so that means you have to pay for the brain scans and the medical tests, and he's starting to think. That's
what he's realising now, 33, 34, he's got a steady income on the working again on the sites, and but yeah, no, it's a very good read.
Yeah, okay. I think just for time purposes, we may just have to wrap this up because we've been here for far too long at this stage.
Absolutely.
But it's been a real pleasure, really, really enjoyable, fellas. Shane Keegan, whose pieces you can read in the Times Online every Thursday, former manager of Wexford Youths in Galway, and David Sneyd, who is working away with the Mail. Thanks a million, pleasure.
Thank you.
We'll see you again soon.
Enjoy.
Cheers. That's us done. We'll be back next Sunday. Good luck.